now in the second half. We see Shelbyville in the lead by a score of 33-26. All right. Garrett jumps on the after getting it back from Murray. They fight for the rebound. It's picked up by center. Underhands it to Stick. Fast break. Stick going to try to make it all alone. No dice. The battle tries to follow up. There. Doesn't make it. No dice again. On the right side, the ball goes to the center. He's bounces once. Has a second shot. No good. They fight for the rebound, and Skip picks it up now in backcourt after Billy Beck of Shelbyville touched it. Then to center on the left. In the deepest corner of the plant, his set shot is short of the mark, and Terre Haute Garfield's average, as Bill told you, is very low. Court length pass to Chambers from Garrett. Chambers shoots, wins the basket, drops out. Rebound pulled by Ronnie Bland of Garfield. To his right, he sends it to center and back to Gordy Nessman. A long pass way over the head and out of bounds. So Bobby Skidder was waiting for it patiently in the left-hand corner in his own territory for Garfield. The whistle blows. Momentary timeout taken by the officials to retrieve the ball and send it bounce again. From Murray to Johnson. Johnson brings it to Smith. Gordy sidles off to the right like a little puppy dog into the corner. It's given to Chambers and back out to Billy Beck, the guard. Murray now changes places with Breck and gives it to Johnson. Here's Garrett coming out of the pivot on the three figure eight. They're coming out of the left and working the right. Now Garrett changes the trajectory now and fights his way on an angle across on the left side of the keyhole. As Shelby drives forward. No attempt being made to shoot. Close guarding now. Looks Garrett is fed by Murray. Garrett lays it up, misses, follows up and hits. Bill Garrett. Fed by Marshall Murray on a sweet pickoff play off a figure eight. Shelby 35, Garfield 26. Long, whipping pass in from net to Lavella. No good. Good guarding. Murray picks up the ball, which never hit the rim in time. He passes to Breck. Breck loses it, but Johnson picks it up for Shelby. Fast pass to Garrett. Overshoots the mark on the right side. But the rebound is cleared by Chambers. His shot is short. The whistle is blown, and the foul is called. Wide Lavella. And that's number 3 on Lavella, and Garrett is going to get to shoot at least one. Very personal. Walter Thurston throws up how many fingers? Just his forefinger. One shot for Bill Garrett. Going to attempt now. Up there. That's good. All right, now Garrett.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's David Finkel. On behalf of the Board of Directors and volunteers here at the Strand Theater, we welcome you to tonight's first Community Treasure Series in over 2 years. We've had to take a halt on most of our activities in the theater because of COVID, but we're certainly thrilled to be back. I'd like to welcome our audience live on Facebook. Thank you very much for Cody Verkamp. This is a brand new system that we're using. So if you have comments online, please let us know. Give us a thumbs up. Also, if you have questions during the question and answer period, you can submit them online and we'll be able to read them and have it here. We do have quite a lively audience here tonight, and we're very happy that you're here. Before we get started, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. First of all, we have other events coming up as we slowly get started after our hibernation. We have our first concert event coming up this weekend. We're doing a Buddy Holly weekend, and we have a tribute concert on March 26th. That's Saturday night. It'll start at 7:30, and it's Kenny James live as Buddy Holly. And if he's been here before, several years ago, and if you've seen him, you know how entertaining he is. And then also, we will be having a movie, The Buddy Holly Story, on Friday night. That stars Gary Busey. That's from 1978. And that kind of puts you in the mood. And for those of you who may not remember Buddy Holly, and those of you who do remember Buddy Holly, gives you some background in his life and up until the time the day the music died. So that is going to be this weekend, Friday and Saturday night. We really appreciate if you would come out. The Community Treasure Series is a 6-part series. We are doing this in conjunction with the Grover Center. We have had a lot of fun doing these in the past, and we just would like to thank our partners, Alex and everyone over there at the Grover Center. It's wonderful to do events with them, and we certainly bring local history alive here in the Strand. We are sitting in a very old venue. I know that they're going to be talking about the fact that the Shelbyville High School basketball team used to play right up there. The gymnasium was on the 3rd floor of the Stagehouse section of our building, and the basketball goal is still there. If anybody wants to look, you have to climb about a 10-foot ladder to get to it, but we're happy to show you. Also, before we get started, want to remind you that the 1947 championship trophy is back in our cabaret area. please take the opportunity and have your picture taken with that, because it's not often out of the trophy case, and certainly to get up close and personal. I think as we look back, and Rachel Ackley and I talked about this, a lot of people and I talked about this, in the events, in this bicentennial year, in the events in Shelbyville, in the past 200 years, the 47 championship has to rate amongst one of the greatest events. And as a graduate of Indiana University, go Hoosiers, we are very happy that the legacy that Shelbyville High School was able to provide Indiana University and the rest of the Big Ten. That's an important thing, and it's very nice. A lot of communities are represented, but when you go into Assembly Hall and you see that big statue standing right there of Bill Garrett, Shelbyville has done a good job of that. So anyway, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for watching online. We hope you enjoy the event. And now I will turn it over to our Master of Ceremonies, Jack Boyce. Take it away, Jack. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. It's interesting because of an event 5 years ago where a group of us watched an individual's house. 5 years later, we're here now with things lined up at a serendipitous moment because this individual, Frank Gullo, had passed. He had a lot of film, video, audio, 8mm, 6, whatever, he had it all. We were able to garner that with Jim Godden, one of the DeWitts, taken to Tom Barker's house at Adams, Indiana. 50, 60,000 feet of film later, 5 years, we had a meeting a couple of months ago. Let's get this into Treasure Series. Here comes March 22nd. Shelbyville Golden Bears. They're on top. So we are back here with all the right people, came together at all the right time for this to be done, and everyone here, everything was in place. Could not have been any better. Thank goodness I saw how big this was going to be. John Hartnett has so much knowledge in this area. We are so glad that he was able to do this. I'm just here to kind of preface what's taken place. I mentioned the fact that some of the film Tom Barker has had for a long time. He found it after 30 years. Still looking for his car keys, but he found the film. But that's preservation is his job, and he does that. John Hartnett, tell us all about it.
Thank you all for coming tonight. So much, it means so much to us. Want to first thank Tom Barker, Jack Boyce, David Finkel for putting this all together. The Strand provides such a valuable service to Shelby County, and the people and the volunteers who make this all possible really provide a treasure for the Shelbyville and Shelby County community. So this is the perfect place to honor the 1947 team. It's also perfect because Shelbyville played basketball on the third floor here, which is right above the ceiling, until 1922 when Paul Cross Gymnasium was constructed and finished. And so that was it's a bit of history here tonight to have the gymnasium where Shelbyville played at one point in time. Tom DeBon, Mayor of Shelbyville, could not be here tonight, but he sends the following proclamation. Whereas on March 22nd, 1947, the Shelbyville Golden Players played basketball and defeated Terre Haute Garfield in the state championship, played at Butler Fieldhouse with a record-breaking score of 68-58, which surprised the experts. Golden Bear members of the state championship team included Donald Burwell, Louis Bowers, William Breedlove, Lauren Hank Hemingway, Marshall Murray, Walter Winton, Emerson Johnson, William Breck, Bill Garrett, Don Chambers, and Donald Robinson. Coach Frank Barnes, assistant coach Arthur Doc Barnett. Whereas Charles S. Preston wrote in the March 29, 1947 edition of the Indianapolis Recorder, to all those who want to win in civic affairs, politics, or any other field, we enthusiastically recommend the example set by the Shelbyville High School basketball team, the Golden Bears and their coach, Frank Barnes. Whereas the city of Shelbyville has continued to follow the example set by these fine young people and their coaches, some 75 years ago, I, Tom DeBon, Mayor of the City of Shelbyville, do hereby recognize the great accomplishments on and off the court and encourage our community to celebrate the 1947 Shelbyville Golden Bears State Championship teams and their families on this 75th anniversary, in witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the Mayor of Shelbyville to be affixed this 22nd day of March, 2022, signed Tom DeBon, Mayor of Shelbyville. From the Shelbyville Central School Corporation, Board President Curtis Johnson. I consider myself fortunate to be the president of the Shelbyville Central School Board for a variety of reasons. The schools of our community have always been the great equalizer, affording opportunities educationally or otherwise to all of our children, regardless of the socioeconomic background. Shelbyville schools have a heritage of which our entire community should be extremely proud. The crown jewel of that heritage is the 1947 Golden Bear Boys Basketball State Championship. In those halcyon days, high school basketball was the linchpin of Hoosier communities, and the Golden Bears were leaders on and off the court. On the court, the victory against Terre Haute Garfield in the state finals was not only the culmination of a season of excellence by Don Chambers, who is with us tonight, and his teammates, but also the start of a period of prolonged basketball brilliance for Shelbyville, of which some names are here tonight, one of them being Gary Long. Every season, our teams should strive to be worthy to follow in their footsteps. Off the court, before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball later that year, Coach Frank Barnes showed the courage and leadership to start 3 players of color at a time when such a decision inevitably met with vitriol by many in our state. We should all be proud that our community allowed merit, not the color of one's skin, to dictate who led our basketball team that year. As we remember and honor this group of young men and what they did for themselves and for our community those many years ago, we should see it as not a destination or a goal accomplished, but a journey that our community can see as a bridge that we built for everyone to follow. A lodestar example showing us what the path of hard work, dedication, and belief in your teammates, regardless of skin color or cultural heritage, can do. We are fortunate to be able to follow this exemplary group of young men who did so much in 1947. On behalf of the Shelbyville Central School Board, I extend our warmest regards to the 1947 Shelbyville Golden Bears State Basketball Championship, a team truly worth celebrating. Signed, Curtis Johnson, President, Shelbyville Central Schools. Quick recap of that season. First of all, I think it's really important that we recognize Nate Kaufman tonight. Nate Kaufman was a pillar of the Shelbyville community and, of course, supported the 1947 team, but a poor Jewish immigrant rose to great heights in Shelbyville and became a gentleman who not only supported basketball, but supported an entire community. His mark, his namesake, is all over the community of Shelbyville. Nate is a charter member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, being inducted in 1967, and upon his death in 1981, he was a member of the Silver Charter Club of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. Nate Kaufman was one of the men who was responsible for Bill Garrett and his admission into Indiana University in 1947. Louis Bauer, Bill Breck, Bill Breedlove, Everett Burwell, Don Chambers, Bill Garrett, Hank Hemingway, Emerson Johnson, Marshall Murray, Don Robinson, and Walter Winton. Coaches Frank Barnes, assistant coach Doc Barnett, Shelbyville Golden Bears of 1947. A team that defied the odds and confounded the experts. A squad that dropped out of the top 20 in the state rankings in mid-January, holding a record of 10-5 at the time. Never considered to be among the state's best until the state championship. The Bears would reel off 13 consecutive wins and avenge early losses against Columbus and Terre Haute Garfield as they progressed through the tournament. They would claim sectional, regional, semi-state titles, and then defeat favored Terre Haute Garfield to raise the title trophy at what is now Butler Fieldhouse 75 years ago to this day. I read that many basketball writers did not believe that Shelbyville could beat Lafayette Jeff, a team that had defeated Shelbyville by 2 points earlier in the season. Well, that issue became moot when Lafayette Jeff failed to advance far enough to face the Golden Bears. WISH radio broadcaster Luke Walton provided play-by-play coverage that day and later spoke at a Kiwanis event honoring Shelbyville State Championship team. He described the 1947 champs as a team of good young men working perfectly together. Emerson Johnson, 11 straight shots, most of them from beyond the three-point line in today's basketball. Bill Garrett set a tournament scoring record that lasted 9 years, broken by Oscar Robertson, one of the all-time greats. Banquets, speeches, and dances went on for 10 days, culminating in a gathering and a parade of 100 floats in downtown Shelbyville. Walter Fort, principal of Shelbyville's segregated Booker T. Washington Elementary School, Bill Garrett, Emerson Johnson, and Marshall Murray's alma mater, drew sustained applause for his opening statement at a congratulatory banquet. I quote, "I am deeply proud to be connected with the Shelbyville school system because it has proved its belief in the fundamental principles of American democracy. Democracy is practiced as well as taught in Shelbyville." And the Indianapolis Recorder wrote, "Salute to Shelbyville. It has consistently and successfully remained a well-knit community, working consciously and with a purpose toward the common good of all." On the 75th anniversary of the Shelbyville High School State Championship, it is our pleasure to have people from Shelbyville's past come to visit us tonight and to provide a few words for us, possibly of inspiration. Steve Drake has a history of commitment to Shelbyville High School basketball. A 2-year letterman, he received the Paul Cross Award in 1967. He would serve on the Shelbyville High School coaching staff for 16 years, including as an assistant coach in the 1986 state finalist team. He was also Shelbyville athletic director for 9 years. Also with us tonight is Steve's son, Mark Drake. Mark was a standout player at Shelbyville High School, a 4-year letterman, and a recipient of the Paul Cross Medal. Mark, please stand up. In 1997, Steve was the primary organizer for the 1940 State Championship's 50th anniversary celebration at Shelbyville High School. Steve Drake.
Thank you, and thank you to the Strand and to the community to come together on this special evening 75 years ago. I can just imagine what it might be like. A couple of people that I'd like to recognize. First, the leader of the Golden Bears today, our head coach, John Hartnett Jr. There's so many John Hartnetts in this community. There's JJ. John, will you please stand up? Also, I might say, part of my family here, my grandson, Keaton, please stand up, and his mother, Noelle. You got that? Okay. No. Thank you. And I noticed some other faces out there, such as John Wetnight and Dave Ross from Morristown, who always signed in as a scout when he came to Shelbyville High School. I know who he was scouting, but he wasn't us, I don't think. But anyway, I just wanted to share a few things. Growing up, dreaming to be a Golden Bear someday, living down on Noble Street, riding my bicycle to the boys' club on a pretty daily basis, I'd always go by Booker T. And to be honest with you, the court was often empty at that time. And I wondered, though, times what it would have been like to see Bill Garrett and some of the other players go at it there on that particular court. And then going into the boys' club and looking up at that small picture of Nate Kaufman. Nate Kaufman, as John said, was a very important part of this community. Hall of Famer, high school basketball official. I believe he coached at St. Joseph when they had a high school here. And, of course, did many more things for Indiana University later on. Matter of fact, his son, Bart, helped me learn a jump shot while I lived up by Hendricks. And then going on from there, the thread and connection to this team for me just kind of occurred. And I think unconsciously it helped me in many ways. And I think it helped a lot of kids that dreamed about the Golden Bears. Tom Graham, who lived up on Van Avenue on the hill, had that wonderful court up there. I'd go up there when I was younger. Sometimes I got to play. Many times I didn't. And I can remember Lonnie Walker. Man, he was the biggest human being I'd seen up to that point. Great player. Tom played. Just a lot of kids. We'd get into a game once in a while. That was where we played. And then attending Shelbyville High School. Actually, my 9th grade year was at the old high school. And I remember going into the Paul Cross Gymnasium for the first time. And I remember that picture there in the east side of the gymnasium. You couldn't miss it. And the pigeon roost up above you. It was a great place. I didn't get to play in Garrett Gymnasium, but I want to tell you what, a lot of you people didn't get to play in Paul Cross. And it's a pretty special place. I think Gary would agree with that. It's and even when we had a game back there during the osmosis, what was that? Histoplasmosis. We had a game back there, and it was pretty well filled up. It was a lot of memories came back. And then working with Tom Graham later on, researching for Getting Open book. That is a great summary of this, and also much more than just a basketball story. And I think that was a big part of that for Tom Graham, to create a book that told the story of what these kids went through during this particular period of time. And then coming back after college, teaching at Shelbyville High School, and walking down the same, and there was Frank Barnes, one of the most distinguished looking individuals I think I ever remember. The white hair, the sweater vest. He was a pretty amazing guy, and to be there and to be able to talk to him. And then going into Doc Barnett's health class, as many of you did. What a gentleman. And a couple other individuals I like to mention, I know that was part of that basketball program. Ray Henshaw, history teacher at the high school, a gentleman, and Malcolm Clay, longtime counselor, etc., at the high school, and coaches. So the thread, the connection to this team seemed to continue throughout my lifetime, and I'm glad that had happened. Also, going on to be a coach, we were fortunate to get to 1986 to the Final Four. We had probably maybe the second best athlete that Shelbyville has ever had, and I always felt Bill Garrett was a natural athlete. Look at the photo, the picture of the team in the Garrett Gymnasium today. We didn't have a weight room, I don't think, back then, but everything was natural. Julius Denton's probably the closest that we've had since then. Of course, he led that '86 team. Tony Martin was also a great player. I got to play with one of the biggest big men in Shelbyville's history, Wes Miller. Matter of fact, Wes, Doug Ash, Tim Ash, and myself, we had dates, and we'd go by and pick up Wes. He was like a sophomore when we were seniors. And we'd sit back there and watch an evening movie. That was our ritual on Sunday evenings to do that. It was all part of the basketball community and to be in a Golden Bear. Then I became an athletic director. 1997 rolls around, 50-year anniversary. We started to put together a program to bring those players back. Some, of course, had already passed, unfortunately, including Bill. In 1975, I believe it was, 74, I'm sorry. And it was a great evening. We found some things that we didn't know existed. Some of them are here tonight. The scrapbook, for example, that's in the back there, that was put together, we believe, by the librarian at Shelbyville High School back in 1947. And that scrapbook was full to the theme. A custodian, Steve Lutz, at the high school found it up in the upper workings of Garrett Gymnasium. What it was doing up there, how it got up there, I don't know. But we find it, he brings it in. Of course, the question is, what do we do with it? So we go to the museum here, and he said, well, it's in pretty bad shape. That's 50 years ago almost. And it seemed like it was right timing because 97 was rolling around. And we finally just made Xerox copies of everything. And when you go to Garrett Gym in the trophy case, there should be 4 or 5 of those things that we laid out. So we preserved it in that way. And what is the real original thing is amazing. And it was the whole school year. Just about everything that was going on, it was in the Shelbyville News and the Indianapolis Star. So, connection again. Talking to Mrs. Garrett, went up to Indianapolis, talked to her about the celebration, inviting the family members, and many of them were able to come. I could still remember, I believe it was Bill Jr., we were having a little reception afterwards, and there was a picture of Mr. Garrett. And I could still remember Bill looking at me, and everybody said, they're twins. They look, I mean, and even he says, my gosh, I do look like him. And it was just amazing how it just set him back. But a wonderful, wonderful family. My friend here, James, got to work with him, actually. Drove him crazy for a year, coaching. And his son, that's here in the crowd. Where's James Jr.? Where's he at? Stand up, please. Right there he is, a senior at Shelbyville High School there. And his mom with him there. There he told. So the thread of that team with me and my family and with myself is I just have many, many, many memories. And I'm very thankful that I'm having a chance to share those. And I've already had some things to jog my memory. Talking to some different people this evening and that. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope that this never goes away. It is a very special moment. Any of you that played and any of you coached, you just know how difficult this is. You know, you're not the only school, you're not the only coach that wants to win a state championship. And that makes it that much more difficult. But I tell you what, being part of it in a small way, athletic director, coach, teacher, player, I tell you what, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's helped my family and things I went through. So enjoy this evening, and thank you.
I do remember hearing stories about Steve and Doug Ash, Tim Ash taking Wes to movies on Sunday night. However, I do not believe Steve had a date, so I think he needs full disclosure there. I think he needs to. Wow. James Garrett Jr. is with us tonight. I've known James and his family since we were in junior high together. He's a year behind me. There are not finer people than Tony and James Jr. and James III. James's dad, James Garrett, was the 1950 Paul Cross recipient, and his uncle Bill was legendary. Mr. Basketball, All-American at Indiana University. Quite a legacy for a young man to follow. James has followed that in this community and passed with flying colors. He has done everything in his power to keep alive the memory of his father and his uncle and the 1947 state championship team. We're very pleased to have him with us tonight. James Garrett.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I want to say, first and foremost, on behalf of the Garrett family, we thank you all for coming out this evening. We thank the community of Shelbyville. I was speaking with my cousin, Lori Garrett, just this past weekend, and I told Lori it is phenomenal the way the Shelbyville and Shelby County community remembers 1947 and that state championship team. So I and my family cannot thank you all enough for the memories, for embracing that state championship team and keeping that forever vigilant within this community. Thank you. As John mentioned, I'm James Garrett Jr. I played with John. Every young man's dream is to be a Golden Bear. When Steve was talking about he and Wes and the Ash brothers, I was in elementary school, and at Golden Bear home games, we would be underneath the basket, and if the ball would come out, towards the stands, we'd toss it back to the guys. And every elementary student was looking forward to the day that they get to be a Golden Bear. And I do not take for granted the fact that I had the opportunity to put that uniform on and be a Shelbyville Golden Bear. It's truly, truly one of the highlights of my career. And I had the opportunity to play with some wonderful individuals. Like John said, I am a year behind him. My class was 1977, and it was the 30th anniversary of the state championship team. And I remember someone saying, well, we got a Garrett on the team, so look for that magic to happen again. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. That magic didn't happen, but we did put forth our best effort to win a state championship. Just a little history about basketball. And in the other 49 states and now around the globe, it's just basketball. But in Indiana, it's far more than just basketball. And I mean, we take this sport very, very seriously. It's ingrained in our DNA. It's in our hearts. And again, in 49 other states, it's just basketball. But it's something truly special here in Indiana. And my uncle, although he died very young in 1974, I remember having conversations with him and he instructing me on the nuances of the game and most importantly, the fundamentals of the game of basketball. And interestingly enough, you heard Coach Frank Barnes. So I was born February 26, 1959. Let me tell you what was going on during that period of time in 1959. Bill Garrett and the Crispus Attucks Tigers were working their way through the sectional and hoping to win a state championship. Not only did he win a state championship as a player, but he won one as a coach for the Crispus Attucks Tigers. And so my mother was pregnant with me and due to deliver. But the Garrett family in this state was concerned about the Crispus Attucks Tigers winning a state championship. And so if this child is born, okay, that's all fine and well, but we want Bill and the Tigers to get a championship. And fortunately, that did happen. I was born before they won the state championship, but the focal point for the Garrett family, my grandparents and Bill's family, and I think even my mother and father, well, I'll say my father, not my mother. I think my mother was concerned about me being born, but everyone else was laser focused on the Crispus Attucks Tigers winning a state championship. And so I was born February 26th, and Coach Frank Barnes came to the hospital to congratulate my mother and to bring a gift for this new bundle of joy that came into the world. Frank Barnes brought my parents, for me, a basketball. And the basketball weighed probably more than I did. So I had a full-size basketball, and I knew what I was supposed to eventually do with that ball. And I did try to work to be the best player that I could be. But this is a celebration, and we're talking 75 years from the state championship. And to remember that and to bring back those memories, those fond memories. I can't tell you how often someone, when they find out that I am Bill Garrett's nephew, they want to talk basketball. They want to talk Shelbyville Golden Bear basketball, or they want to talk Indiana basketball. And I love and appreciate that. And again, I will close with simply, again, on behalf of the Garrett family. I spoke with Billy Garrett today, and he's trying to get here soon for my mother's homegoing, and he's sorry that he couldn't be here this evening. But from Billy Garrett and Judy Garrett Shelton in Houston, Texas, and Laurie Jean Garrett Cabina out in San Anselmo, California, we thank you all from the bottom of our hearts, and we love this community, and we love the fact that the 1947 state championship will never die in this community. Thank you.
Jim's mother, Patricia, passed away recently. And so, Jim, on behalf of the entire Shelbyville community and those of us who've known you for so long, we extend our condolences and our love and know that you're in our thoughts. I've known James for right around 55, 56 years, and James is very articulate. However, I've never heard anyone describe him as a bundle of joy before. So that's a new one there, but I appreciate that. Thank you, James. That's really good. Gary Long is with us tonight. Gary goes around telling people he was the star of Hoosiers. Gary was not. However, one of the stars of Hoosiers is with us tonight. Buddy, one of the original Hoosier Hickory Huskers, is with us tonight. Brad Long, would you please stand? Gary and Brad are so gracious. Anytime anyone wants to talk to them about the movie, I'm sure it gets somewhat tiresome, but that movie made such an impact on the community and on the region, on the country, that it is a real treasure, and we appreciate all the goodwill you always show in talking about that movie, regardless of how laborious it sometimes is. So thank you for being here tonight, Brad. Gary Long, two-time Paul Cross Award recipient, was selected to several 1957 All-State basketball teams. In fact, conventional wisdom says that had Shelbyville won the sectional that year, Gary might have made the All-Star team. He certainly was one of the best 10 players in the state that year. I don't think there's much debate about that. He would go on to be a standout player at Indiana University for Branch McCracken, where he was named team captain as a senior and averaged 12 points a game for the 15-9 Hoosiers in 1961. Those of us who played for Shelbyville are eternally grateful to him for being such a gentleman, such a tremendous role model for us and for the players who play today, and for carrying on the Shelbyville tradition. And we are so pleased to have him with us tonight. Gary Long.
That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the people that have already been mentioned by Steve and James, and I won't go into that. I'm one other guy here that was as old as me and remembers it. I'm going to talk about that. And as you can see, I don't have any notes because I'm just going to tell the things I've told to a lot of people a lot of times about those days. I was 6 years old when I first started hearing adults talk about anything, started comprehending things, first started attending Shelbyville basketball games. Saw how exciting it was, and probably my biggest hero that year was sitting right there. His name's Don Chambers, and he knows this story because every time Don would stand up to go in the game, there would be a standing ovation. And it was Bill Garrett coming out of the game, and I didn't know that. I thought they were cheering for Don. And it was the next year then, when I was 7 years old, that Shelbyville won the state, and I was downtown with the parade going down through town, and those Shelbyville basketball players up on top of fire trucks. And you talk about an inspiration for a 6 and 7 year old to want to become a Shelbyville Golden Bear. And that to me, the reason I've had such a great life for 82 years has a lot to do with that basketball team. Because I went on and played, as that nice introduction said, and got a free education, free graduate degree, helped coach at IU for a year. A lot of people don't realize that. While I was getting my graduate degree, I always tell the Van Arsdales and John McLaughlin, I'm the reason they turned out so well. they're pro careers. They still call me coach. But from then on, just about everything happened. Not only my education, my job, which I kept turning down, but people knew who I was, because back in those days, there were no shopping centers. There were only 3 channels on TV. If you played for IU or Purdue, everybody knew who you were. So they came after me to sell. And I said I couldn't sell anything. But I turned out 40 years later, was still with Jostens, and my son Brad and Mike are still with him, and my younger son Scott was with Jostens for a while in Florida. So everything since that time has been related to basketball. All the stories, books written. Every time I get to telling any kind of a story, it usually has to do with something to do with the basketball career during those years. And they mentioned Brad's here tonight. He's usually the public speaker. He still speaks a lot, because that movie Hoosiers had to do with basketball and became an all-time classic. I did have a bit part in it because of Brad, and I hemmed it up too much, and my line got cut. So, so if you look good in the credits, you'll see my name in there. But I just am so grateful to this team. Dave Ross is here tonight, too. A lot of the stories I still tell have to do with our Masters games. David is in the Masters Hall of Fame. For coaching some national championship teams when we were old guys. We always wanted to turn a year older so we could play against those guys that were 5 years older than us in the next category. So appreciate everyone that came tonight. I appreciate everything that's been said and all the names that were mentioned. I won't try to do that. I just want to thank you for being here and for the great opportunity and the thing that this great team did for me all through my life. Thank you again.
Yeah, if you have one line and it gets cut, acting probably isn't. There is an extended version of Hoosiers where Buddy gets put back on the team, and Brad received numerous compliments for really his acting ability in that scene. So that extended version is really, for any Hoosiers fan, as so many of us are, that's a must-have. And yeah, Brad did a tremendous job, as did your cohorts during that movie. I'm often asked, and have been asked when this was coming into play, this anniversary celebration, well, you know, they say Bill Garrett, Marshall Murray, Don Chambers, Bill Breck, they were from another era, another time. How would they have done today? Would they have been okay? I said, no, it really would have been different. With today's technology, conditioning, and weightlifting advances, they would have beaten Terre Haute by 20 instead of 10. That's how good they were. Could you imagine these guys with the advances that have been made in weight training and conditioning? Wouldn't have been close. In fact, they beat 2 of the best teams in the state at the time. Greatness has a way of defying generations. So if you were great back then, the chances are you were going to be great today. Don Chambers and Hank Hemingway are the 2 surviving members from the 1947 Shelbyville State Champions. Mr. Hemingway could not be with us tonight, but we are very honored to have Don Chambers here for the celebration. Don was a junior on the team that year, played a pivotal role, basically the team's 6th man. And as Gary said, the 6th man got a rousing ovation when he went into the game. So he must have been doing some very special things back for Shelbyville. He logged crucial minutes during the East Chicago game in the afternoon and during the Bears' victory over Terre Haute Garfield in the championship game. Don earned his degree from Tri-State University, now Trine University at the time, and he worked as an engineer at Chrysler in Newcastle for 36 years. He currently works at the Indiana Basket Hall of Fame in Newcastle. I had the pleasure of talking to Don on the phone for about 45 minutes the other day, and my questions, I kept peppering him with questions. He finally said, well, I'll just talk to you next Tuesday, John. So it was a very interesting conversation. It's our pleasure to have with us the 6th man from the 1947 state champions, Don Chambers.
surprised. All this talking so far, and hadn't been anything mentioned about the near riot we had in 1947 when we played Garfield on our home floor. As the story goes, Earl Townsend was one of the referees. Him and his brother John, Earl and John, was noted athletes at Tech and at Michigan, and he was one of the referees. Don Veller, who was a football coach at Hanover, and at that time was assistant down at IU, was the other referee. And near the end of the game, why, there's always a big controversy about a charging and a blocking foul. And Veller would call a foul on LaVellette. And Townsend, being the senior referee, reversed the call and called it on Garrett. And that happened 2 or 3 times right near the end of the game, and Garrett fouled out. And Garfield won the game. Well, after the game was over, while we all rushed, it got pretty hostile from the fans. After the game was over, we all rushed to our dressing rooms. The referees took off for the dressing rooms. A good portion of the men and the fans, they took off after the referees, wanted to congratulate them on the game that they called. At that time, why, the referee's dressing room was below the varsity dressing room, about half a depth in the ground, right underneath us. And they had to call the state police in. We had awning-type windows on the east side of our western room that opened out into the east side of the gym there. And they had to call the state police to come up and bring their cars around. And they had to get security to get them out of the city limits. Now, the odd thing about that is that the coach, Willard Kirk, he played basketball at Shelbyville. He was about a 1933 or 32 Paul Cross winner, and I think he was All-American down at IU in 1935. That is the first and only time that I know we ever played Garfield Terre Haute. You don't remember any, do you, Gary, later? So that was the story there. And luckily, Mr. Breck, who was a principal, he happened to be on the board of controls for the IHSAA, and it was investigated, and luckily we could have been disqualified for the tourney for the rest of the year. Some schools had got disqualified for things a lot less than that. Now, the other thing I want to point out, you've all seen the pictures of the team that was taken on the floor after the game. They had those white uniforms, and as you see them, they're trimmed in gold. Well, that really wasn't the case. Those uniforms was actually trimmed in red. Now, we was using old uniforms, white uniforms for home games and gold uniforms for away games, and Frank had ordered new uniforms, and this was after the war, and it was hard to get uniforms. But we had new uniforms came in. They was white for home games with red trim, and red uniforms with white for away games. So we got those uniforms. The first game we wore them, we went up to Short Ridge. They had knee socks that came up right below the knee, and we had black leather shoes, basketball shoes, like the referees wears, real nice shoes, but they had a hard soles on them. And during the game, why, everybody was running up and down the floor having to pull their stockings up because they was made for bigger limbs than what our players had. So at halftime, why, we threw away the socks. We didn't ever use those again. We switched back to our Converse Chuck Taylor All-Star basketball shoes, and we lost the game. Well, over the period of the next several weeks, why, we played 2 more games away in those red uniforms, and we won those. But then we came up against Rushville in the 4th game that we used those uniforms, and we got beat. So when we got back, why, Frank said, those uniforms, there's a curse on those uniforms. We're not wearing them anymore. We're going to give them to the freshman team. And we'll give you boys the shoes. So we got our nice leather shoes. They wasn't very good for playing outside because the soles were glued on. They always kept coming unglued. I always had to keep gluing mine back on again. So we went back to our old gold uniforms and a white, but we kept the white uniforms with the red trim. But when they painted those pictures, why, they took the liberty to take the red out and put the gold in. Now, there was a lot of controversy about the state finals. It's partly the semi-state, we played the first game in the semi-state, so we had time to go into Indianapolis to stay at a hotel, and we stayed at Hotel Raleigh. And before, Frank had contacted the hotel and said, now, we have 3 black players on the team. Is it going to be a problem? And they said, no, no problem, no problem. So after the game was over, while we drove up to the hotel there, as I remember, we pulled in the back. There was a parking lot near the back, and we kind of went into a back door. It was a nice back door. It wasn't, just what you think of a back door, but we went in, and they handed us our keys, and we went up to the room. Well, afterwards, we went down to eat. There was a coffee shop there, as I remember. Now, in Tom Dram's book, while he talks about we had a team meal in like a banquet facility, but we ate in a coffee shop. And I remember we had an odd meal. We had fried bacon, French toast, and hot tea. Now, I don't know, I'm not a nutritionist now. I don't know whether that was a good meal for, for another game or not, but that's what we had. Now, Frank found out that the black players, they didn't stay in that hotel. They stayed in an annex, which was connected to the hotel, Raleigh. But he thought, well, they'd really be upset. Well, Frank was upset, but they wouldn't. They had radios in their rooms, but we didn't have in our room, so everything worked out pretty well. So then when we got to the state finals, we didn't want that to happen again, and we played the second game in the state finals. You know, the first game started, 1:15, and the second game might start at 3 o'clock. So it was really late when you got done, sometimes in the afternoon, and you had to come back like 7 o'clock to get ready for the night game. Well, Doc Barnett, he'd been a fraternity member of a fraternity up in Michigan where he went to college at. He made arrangement. It was spring break there at Butler, and right south across the parking lot from the Hinkle Field House there, the fraternity house that he was associated with. So he made arrangements for us to go to that fraternity house and stay between games. So I remember walking across the parking lot, getting to that fraternity house, and here again in the book, now I know I met Tom Graham. He came up to Newcastle a lot. I got pictures for him, and he talked to a lot of different people. I don't know where all these different stories come from, but he had us in a big room. He had Bill Breck and Emerson Johnson getting into a pillow fight, and he said it lasted for an hour. Can you believe that? Frank Barnes would turn over his grave if he saw that. They was wasting their energy having a pillow fight. And also that we went to a banquet room and had our meal. Well, what I remember, 3 of us was up in a dorm and had double bunks, and they brought our meal up in a box, lunch box, and it had a ham sandwich, a small pack of potato chips, an apple, a big chocolate chip cookie, and a container of milk. And that was our meal. That's the way I remember it. Also in that book, because somebody said, well, we're going to have 3 black players coming to the fraternity house, they'll have to have sheets and pillowcases. Well, the story goes that Doc Barnett's wife went to the store and bought 10 sheets and pillowcases, and she took them up and put them on the beds. That never happened as far as I know, because we went into that dorm room and we just took off our shoes and just laid up on the beds. I don't remember that ever happening. Now, the other thing that was unusual was the fact that here we was playing Garfield again. They was undefeated. Washington, East Chicago from the Regent, they was maybe lost 2 or 3 games. Oddly enough, they was rated number 1, and Garfield was rated number 2. I think it was kind of based on the strength of the schedule. Now, Frank told us that on the Friday before the state finals, they have the coaches in Indianapolis for a luncheon that they put on. And Johnny Barato, who was the coach at East Chicago, Washington, now Frank told us this. He said that Johnny Barato told him, we're going to take it easy on you guys because we're looking forward to playing Garfield at night. And then we beat them in the afternoon. So he was a fiery coach. He didn't have much to say after that. So here we are playing the undefeated team in the state of Indiana, had beat us on our home floor, and we ended up beating them. There was 10 records set that year. The year before, Jumping Johnny Wilson played for Anderson, and Anderson had a good team, and they set a lot of records. Now, one of the records was 57 points for the total for the winning team. I made the last shot in the game right before the gun went off, and that moved us up to 68. So I broke the record, Larry. We had a lot of records. We had a lot of records for the most points by the winning team, most points by the losing team, most points by adding the team together. Bill Garrett had a four-game total semi-state and finals of 92 points. The year before, Johnny Wilson had 85, and it wasn't until Oscar Robinson came along in 55, 56 that was surpassed. Garfield, we had 23 fouls called on us. They had 16. I backed up Hemingway. Hemingway, I don't know how that happened. He got 4 fouls on him 3 minutes before halftime. That's unusual. I don't know. Somebody's messed up, wasn't keeping track of the fouls, I guess. So he went out, I came in. I started the third quarter. Hemingway came back in to start the fourth quarter. The first play of the game, he committed a foul, and he fouled out again. I had to come back in and play for him again. And then Murray fouled out. So they was the whole front line except for Garrett. And then near the end of the game, while LaVillette fouled out with about 3 minutes to go, and then Garrett fouled out in the last minute to go. And we beat him by 10 points. Now, you've seen the picture. The picture that you see all of was taken down on the floor after the game. We never did have an official team picture taken as a winning team. That became our official picture, I guess. And that year was the first year that they gave gold rings instead of trophies. Because you see all the other teams before them, they all set up an official picture and they got a big trophy sitting in front of them. They gave us rings. Now, I found out later they gave us a rectangular gold ring. The next year, an even year, they gave oblong. So they started doing that for, I don't know, the next maybe 15, maybe 20 years until they started playing a championship football, and then they couldn't give rings anymore. They started giving out those Olympic medals. So we started to come back to, as I remember, it was a drizzly afternoon, and when we came back into town, they had the old pumper truck sitting there at the bridge. We were supposed to get on that, and I think as we started to get out and get on the truck, it started raining again, and Frank told us to get back in the car. We no sooner got back in the car, it stopped raining. So then we're back onto the pumper truck, and I think we rode the pumper truck all the way in town, and I think they had a big bonfire going on. Is it Polk Street, the north side of the courthouse, or north side of the courthouse? They had a big fire there, bonfire on Polk Street. And I don't know how we got back to the gym, but I know we got back there and put our stuff away. It was late. Frank said, well, boys, it's too late to go out and eat. So he reached into his pocket onto his desk drawer and pulled out and gave each one of us 50 cents, which would be, what, $5 today? Said, take that, go get you a hamburger and a milkshake and something and go join the celebration. So that's what we did. Now, afterwards, we had a reception here in Shelbyville. About a week later, we had a banquet up at the Eagles, and we invited back the Garfield team, and surprisingly enough, they came. I don't know whether I would have done that or not. Would you, Gary, being undefeated? I don't think I would. But they came back, and we had a nice meal. We had a dance after rec. And that was about a there was a lot of stuff in those books that kind of went one way or the other, you know. We lost a regional. We lost a seating to the regional that year because our old gym was all temporary bleachers, and about 39 or 40, that's when they added the extensions on to the east and west side of the gym, and then put in permanent bleachers except on the stage end. And all the gyms around there was all built the same type of gym, 2,000 seating with crow's nest in each of the four corners. And some way, Greensburg, it was rumored that they cut down the width of the seats. They numbered the the aisles with numbered seats, and they stole the regional away from us. We had to go down to Greensburg and play the regional. And Madison was one of the teams that was playing down there, and they were still pretty racial in those days. One of the guys kept giving Garrett a hard time. Bill just smiled at him, make another 2 points. And that didn't deter him. So we beat them, put them away. And at one time, we didn't become the Golden Bears anymore. We became the Black Bears because it was unheard of to have 3 black players starting on your team. In fact, there was very few black players on teams in those days. So that's how we got the reputation as a Black Bears. So that's about it. I don't know. Now, tomorrow we're having a reception. I work at the Hall of Fame there in Newcastle. We got a new reception coming in tomorrow for a new group coming in and going to be inducted tomorrow night over in Indianapolis. Jerry Bass from Morristown is one of the recipients. And there's a few from Newcastle that are in the Hall of Fame. Right now there's about 932 people that has been inducted into the Hall of Fame. We keep inducting more and more each year because it's kind of a moneymaker because they have this big banquet. Well, they have this big, well, we're a nonprofit, you know. And it costs $50 for a ticket to go to that banquet, and they have a reception. You get some other perks. You get a magazine. And I told you could take $12 deduction on your taxes off of that $50. I think that's about all. Anybody got any questions? How many people here was around in 1947? Gravy? I know Norman Miller was. He's my classmate. You? You go to the game? No? Well, back in those games, basketball is never going to be the same as what it was when we had one-class basketball. You got one now. And then the girls came in. We got 4 state champions in girls, 4 in boys, where we used to have 1 in boys. I don't have anything. Anybody got any questions? Okay, I'm done. Hey, I know your dad. I played ball with your dad. I want to say one more thing. This film that you saw, or we're going to be seeing, is the afternoon game. It wasn't a film made at nighttime. I don't know why, whether it was the lighting, poor lighting, or film speed. But the very next year, all 3 games was filmed. And from then on, we got the original films up at the Hall of Fame. They're big 16-millimeter films, and the canister about 14 inches in diameter. Somewhere up there, we got the original film. And also, I think we got the original projector that, I got to say some of the guys, after we got our rings, they was disappointed that they didn't get a trophy. And Frank said, now boys, you'll appreciate those rings a lot more than you will the trophies. Well, I shouldn't say this, but a couple weeks later, the downtown merchants got together and they bought it, got us all a trophy. We got a nice Hamilton wristwatch. We got a nice decorative belt buckle and a little basketball on a gold chain. Now, I don't know where that's, don't tell anybody that because we might get disqualified because of the watches, because you're not supposed to give stuff like that. But since it was a community gift, why, I guess it was okay. Okay, I'm done.
I think the statute of limitations has run out on that one. Were those rings from Jofton's?
We did that. It was a little company downtown Indianapolis. Brad, do you remember?
Ray Kraft knows the answer to that question. Call the casino and ask him if he's out there.
Yeah, well, yeah, now they don't.
It's kind of like an open mic program.
Yeah, they should have kept that.
So, be right back after this commercial. What nice paint store? What? Yeah. We have, you're staying after class, you know that, don't you? Video that he talked about, and what is on film, I should say, what is on the premises at the Hall of Fame. Tom Barker can address that. We'll get the microphone down to him. We'll do a question and answer session about how valuable that is, what it's taken for that to be kept in the right condition. We have some of that that's been cleaned up, little work's been done with it. We're ready to roll that. This, at the end of the game, this is what it sounded like, what has been captured. The Shelbyville Golden Bears beat out East Chicago, Washington in the final minutes of the 1947 IHSAA boys basketball semifinal game. Shelbyville scoring 54 points against East Chicago's 46. Okay. Technical difficulty live on Facebook. Okay, David. The Shelbyville Golden Bears beat out East Chicago, Washington in the final minutes of the 1947 IHSAA boys basketball semifinal game. Shelbyville scoring 54 points against East Chicago's 46. Bill Garrett, captain of the Shelbyville Golden Bears, would lead his team to victory again later that night against Terre Haute Garfield in the championship game at the Butler Fieldhouse on March 22nd, 1947. Following the championship game, E.C. Boyd, president of the IHSAA Board of Control, presents the A.L. Trester Medal to Ronnie Bland of Terre Haute Garfield. Robert Jones, IHSAA Board of Control member, presents the championship trophy to Bill Garrett, captain of the Shelbyville Golden Bears. King Kelly, Board of Control member, presents individual awards to the members of the Shelbyville High School Golden Bears. Shelbyville coach Frank Barnes is interviewed by one of many radio stations broadcasting the event. The Golden Bears are William Breck, William Breedlove, Louis Bowers, Donald Chambers, Bill Garrett, Lauren Hemingway, Emerson Johnson, Marshall Murray, Donald Robinson, and Donald Burwell. The Shelbyville Golden Bears, basketball champions of Indiana, 1947. The Shelbyville Golden Bears beat out East Chicago, Washington in the final minutes of the 1947 IHSAA boys. There we go. The film that you saw was not the night game, of course, because lighting conditions were such that you could not produce a good quality product at all. But Tom Barker cleaned that up on the other end of that, so it's visible. You can see faces, and maybe some of you remember. The radio broadcast of that was on WIRE, and I know that one guy was on there that did a wrap-up of the contest, but we have about 6 minutes of that game that was transposed onto a 78 RPM record, and then to a tape cassette and the other electronic media. See if we can get that back up on the speakers we had for later, and can roll that 6 minutes of audio.
That's knocked right out by Smith. Less than a minute to go. 66-57. Shelbyville leads. Shelbyville is leading in the ball game. Johnson of Shelbyville throws it into Garrett. Garrett drives in. Is not shoots yet. Takes steps. Took a shot after taking a step, but Terre Haute throws it in. Shit throws it in to Neff. Neff sets from the center circle. A long, long one is no good. Taken off under the basket by center. There's a foul in the play. It's on Garrett. He's out of the ball game. That's 5 fouls on Garrett. Listen to these cheers. Bill Garrett now has scored 91 points in 4 ball games. He sets a new record. 17 seconds to go in the ball game. That is all. Shelbyville is your new champion. Center takes a shot. It is no good. A rebound by Bland. No good. The ball goes out of bounds. We'll see who gets it. The referee signal for it to give it to Terre Haute. Going in the center into Skip. A long shot by Skip is no good. A foul underneath the basket. And it's a foul on Breck. And that's his fourth. The good thing this game is not going to last much longer. Shelbyville won't have any ball players left to put in there. 66 to 57. Just a few seconds remaining. Just a few. There's the shot. It's good. It was taken by Bland. Shot by Bland was good. And it's 66-58. An 8-point lead. Johnson has the ball in the forecourt. And he is tied up. There's a foul on number 11. That's what it is. Neff charges his fourth foul. And Johnson likes to take the ball out of bounds. 66-58 for Shelbyville. He throws the ball into Breck. Watch for that gun. The pass is on over now to the new boy in there. We'll get it. Chambers. A shot. Good. Chambers scores as the ball game is over. And now they go wild. Yes, sirree, basketball fans. They go wild over there. As the final score is 68 to 58. Shelbyville has defeated Terre Haute Garfield. Terre Haute lost their first ball game of the year just a moment ago. The score is 68 to 58. And right now on the court, Bill Garrett, who set a new record, replacing out of Johnny Wilson set last year, is out there setting the net down.
All right, good, thank you. We'll have a question and answer period coming up next. You ready for that? Go ahead. Yeah.
I first want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This is a tremendous celebration, and we want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks to all of our guests tonight. Gary Long, James Garrett, Steve Drake, and of course, Mr. Don Chambers. You know, one of Shelbyville's most successful native sons one time said, "You can go anywhere in the world from Shelbyville." The 1947 state champs proved just that. Their greatness surrounds us. Garrett Gymnasium, Frank Barnes Court, Doc Barnett Baseball Field. An awards case in the gymnasium is a permanent reminder of what is possible with faith in the human spirit. And so tonight, 1947 basketball state championships team has once again inspired all of us. Thank you all so much for coming. We'll have a question and answer period. Thank you very much.
We're going to have does anyone have any questions first before we take a break? Does anyone have a questions? We've checked online. Okay, we have one question over here.
I'm just curious if any of you know of the connection between that picture of the team taking on the court and the movie Hoosiers. Okay, so if you watch the movie Hoosiers, and I checked this, I was always thought this, we paused it, Brad's shaking his head, he might know.
You're exactly right. There's a
Jasper, the game at
picture
Jasper,
there, yeah.
If you pause your TV and then blow it up, that picture is in the background, supposedly of the Jasper team, but it's represented, it's that picture. Yeah. And I thought I had it on my phone, I was going to share it with you, but yeah, because I took our picture I found and put them side by side, and it is, and somebody told me that Anspall tried to put elements in. So there is a connection between that team and the movie Hoosiers if you find that spot in the movie.
That's very cool. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Candy.
I just think it's wonderful to have a vision of a smiling, alive faces of the team. When we've heard the stories for so long, and know the history, know it, but to see them alive and well and playing basketball, that was just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody online, I know you can hear me, you probably can't see me, but if you have any questions online, let us know, and Alex, the director of the Grover Center, will be happy to moderate those. Just to let you all know, on stage we have people from all over the country, as far as south as Florida, as far west as the state of Washington, and all points in between. So we're very happy that our online audience, and they all put SHS class of 50, SHS class of 61, so a lot of SHS Golden Bears. I'm SHS class of 78, thank you. So does anyone have questions? Anybody else? Alex, do we have any online? Jack, do you have any closing comments?
Just one thought. When I came here in 1967, I had no idea, sitting in Paul Cross Gymnasium, that would be the game of all games. Harry Larrabee hit the 100th point, put the Bears in the winning column. You go to Shelbyville High School, and how I was already in that great Bear spirit that's here in Shelbyville. Just so glad to be part of that. Everybody's great. This panel's great. Big round of applause for them again.
Thank you very much for attending the Community Treasures Series at the Strand. And as we leave, we'll be listening to music from 1947. So if you have any questions,